pretty confident. It's like, come on, who could treat you better than I do? Who loves you more than I do? You'll find out, and you'll know for the better. You'll be back. It's like, why make myself sick when I know you'll be back anyway?
Okay.
So is this really too harsh of a contrast now that the sun is setting? Oh, I probably should sit straight, huh? Shouldn't be so casual, huh? You know, get this for another weird thing these lawyers are making me do. You guys went to Taiwan, but I'm on the Taiwan video? Go figure.
You can be a spokesperson, spokesmodel, because you're really good on camera.
What if I say something totally embarrassing to you guys and you can never show your face in society again?
We'll just edit that part out.
These aren't cuttable. How do I feel about it? I feel very encouraged by a lot of the response from some of the participants. I think most everyone I talked to personally about their impressions on the trip were very positive. A lot of young students were very excited about some of the things they were learning and very interested in doing things on their campuses and getting more involved in Taiwanese affairs. And actually a lot of young working professionals as well were very interested in doing more in the community. And I think that's very encouraging. That's one of the primary goals of the program. And I also think that a lot of people felt that they were able to make some good bonds with other people, either friends that they already knew or new friends. You know, they're able to really feel some type of kinship with each other, and I think that encourages people to, you know, when you have friends who are interested in the same things, you are encouraged to kind of continue on in the same goals, I guess. Yeah, I think the trip was a lot of personal investment, a lot of work, and probably a lot of things that didn't go smoothly or are not like, they're not really things that you can avoid. But I think that is a learning experience for me too, and for the rest of the board too. Yeah, I'm really glad that so many people have been inspired by the program. That's really like very encouraging. It seems like all the work and all the headaches are very secondary when I hear the encouraging things that people's lives are changed and their thinking has changed. I think some of the highlights for me personally were probably getting to know some young Taiwanese people, seeing what their political viewpoints were and why they thought the way they did. One day is not an official day on the program. We sat in the Peace Park and we tried to visit the 228 Museum, but it was closed because the rallying of the KMT supporters forced the museum to close that day. And a couple people who were from the program decided to try to see the museum, but we didn't know it was closed. Instead, we ended up, hanging out by the memorial and just sitting in the park for a while. And different people in our group came and went, and I sat pretty much in the same area the whole time. And at one point, this group of young Taiwanese, is completely unsolicited, completely impromptu, not planned at all, but basically like this group of like 3 young local Taiwanese people came up to me and 2 other people I was sitting with and started asking, if we would be willing to respond to their like consumer product survey. And they asked this in Mandarin, and I responded that, actually, we're probably not your target customer. so it probably wouldn't be good for you to give us this survey because we're just visiting from the United States. And then, then they ask like, oh, what are you doing from the United States? Visiting, and then I explain like our program and what we're doing in Taiwan during the past 10 days, and and I asked them like whether they themselves went out to vote. And actually, the three young people, they were all only 19 years old. So all three of them said that they couldn't vote. And then I asked them if their friends voted, and they said most of their friends were their same age and couldn't vote. And then I asked, well, do you have friends who are 20 and who can vote? And if they did vote, how did they vote? Do they vote for one party or the other? And actually, they said that among their friends who could vote, the vast majority of them voted, and also that there's a pretty even split between their friends as to who voted for which party. And then I asked them, whether they knew why their friends voted the way that they did, and what were the issues that mattered to them. And actually, at that point, all three of them said that they didn't know why their friends voted the way they did, and that they didn't know what were the issues that compelled them to vote the way they did. And they were just kind of nonchalant. And I asked them, oh, do you guys ever talk about these things? And they said, no, not really. We don't really talk about how our friends vote amongst our friends. And I asked why, and they said, well, it's kind of uncomfortable if they don't vote, if they don't think the way you do, or they don't they don't share the same like party affinities that you would share. So in some ways it was really ironic in my mind. Like I could have probably had the same conversation in the US with like 18-year-olds who can vote but who don't, or who vote but they don't really know why they vote the way they do, and they don't really examine the issues, and they don't talk about it with their other friends because it's not comfortable, or because they don't want to alienate their friends who don't think the way they do. So it's very interesting because we had a lot of opportunity to meet with other young Taiwanese people during the trip, and some of those people were DPP Youth Corps, who are obviously supporting the DPP, and then we also met with like students who graduate students actually of one of the speakers who were all very pro KMT, although we didn't have as much time to really actually spend with them to engage in a good discussion. But then we also met with other students who were graduate students of literature down in the southern parts of Taiwan, and basically all the different chances that we had to meet with young people were very interesting, especially young students who are, who really have a lot of education and who are kind of taught to be intellectuals, and we're able to really interact with them and sort of engage in a meaningful discussion with them. So I think that the times that we had planned discussions, it's, I guess a lot of times people think about what they want to say before they say it. But in the park, it was completely impromptu, and we didn't know those people, and they didn't know us. And, we kind of came up with the result that seemed very similar to something you would hear in the United States. And in some ways, it's a little disconcerting, It's like a young democracy, and young people are not so interested in politics. And it sounds very much like the United States, basically. Like, even though we have like hundreds of years worth of democracy in the United States, and many, many years of cynicism and apathy to follow, in Taiwan they already seem to have like a lot of apathy and cynicism amongst young people. Yeah, and that's actually a point that was brought out when we met with the Vision Youth Action Group, which is geared towards raising like political activism and civic awareness in young people in Taiwan. Well, actually, the program was designed to be nonpartisan. The program was designed to give people an overview of current affairs in Taiwan, and is not strictly political in terms of the programming. There's a lot of other things besides political, I guess, views that were part of this official seminars, and our like the way that our time was spent visiting different locations and museums and cultural places. As far as the programming, though, because of the nature of the trip itself, and because of some of the contacts we have in Taiwan who liaison on our behalf, a lot of our programming actually changed at the last minute. And in fact, I don't even have a schedule that's in print that accurately reflects like what we actually did each day, because even by the time we landed in Taiwan, things changed again. So the schedule I had, kept changing basically, and the programming was designed to give people a chance to see what the real political process is in Taiwan, the real participation on like a grassroots level by people. And so, yeah, we did actually visit the DPP rally on March 13th in Kaohsiung. And that rally was one of the largest in Taiwan during the election season. And actually, we had scheduled time to visit other events with the KMT and basically the Pan Blue Party, not just KMT but PFP as well. However, they didn't have a youth corps or a young professionals corps that could allocate time or resources to seeing our group and hosting our group. And so actually we did visit the DPP Youth Corps in Taipei, and they actually made concerted effort to spend time with our group. And because we didn't really, well, there is no such group, no such counterpart for the KMT, then there's really no comparable time that we could have allotted for that kind of interaction with the KMT. The KMT rallies on the evening, the last night before the election on Friday night, were canceled, as well as the DPP rallies and events, because of the assassination attempt on Chen earlier that day. So there was an opportunity the week that we were in Taipei to visit other similar rally for the Pan Blue side. We did visit the KMT office, the headquarters office, and they didn't really allocate the correct resources to see our group and interact with our group. When we arrived there, no one greeted us. We were not on their schedule, and it took about half an hour before we were able to meet with someone. And it was really unfortunate because I actually heard from many of our participants that they really wanted to spend time hearing about the issues and hearing about the party's platform, and we really didn't get that opportunity. So it's, I think also because it was in fact, the very busy time, a very crunch time for both parties, and it's just difficult to, I guess, to set a calendar, to set a schedule, even asking through like all the proper channels and through very high level people. We still basically didn't get all of our requests met. I guess not all of our requests were met, and in fact, many of our requests were completely botched up. So even though we had received confirmation previously that everything would be, I guess, done according to our original requests. So as far as the intention of the programming, it was always the intent of the program to be to deliver an opportunity to see both sides and to participate in both sides and to engage in discussion, meaningful discussion with both sides. That didn't really happen on the trip. when you look at the actual time spent at doing different things. And I think it's just the nature of the busyness of the week and the lack of resources dedicated to our group. It didn't really seem like our group was a very high priority for the KMT. And truthfully, people in our group are American citizens. They're not allowed to vote in the election, and there's only a handful of people who actually hold dual citizenship and the right to vote. So, I can understand why a party that's trying to beat out the incumbent would not want to allocate their time or resource to visiting with our group. But it's unfortunate because a lot of people wanted that opportunity to learn, And as far as as far as my thoughts on the programming, we set out to do something that we couldn't, at the last minute fulfill. But there's a lot of overarching circumstances that are just completely beyond our control, like broken promises, like attempted assassinations, and like canceled events that not only canceled that for us, but for, in general, all the rallies were canceled on Friday night. So there was really nothing we could do. I really don't know, because they didn't appoint a specific liaison person to meet with us or be our contact person. One of the speakers that we had in our program is a very, very high up member of the KMT, and one of the key persons in the party today. And it was through him that we were able to secure an appointment to visit the KMT headquarters and to also meet with young KMT supporters. And like I said, I don't know exactly what happened in terms of whether they just did not take our request seriously, or whether there was a miscommunication or some kind of administrative error, or whether they were aware or not aware of anybody in our group actually being voters who wanted to meet with the KMT group. I don't actually believe that either the KMT or the DPP knew the voting ability of any member in our group, because the only information that we publish on the members in our group comes from our public relations list. And that list only contains people's names, their hometown or origination town, in other words, where they live in the United States today, and their occupation. And it doesn't have information on whether they're eligible to vote in Taiwan. Mm-hmm. Actually, in the application process, there's no indication on the application. Victoria's saying, are you more inclined to support the pan-green ticket or the pan-blue ticket? So there's no real way for the applicants to indicate which direction they lean, and there's no real way for the board to kind of discern that unless they write something specific in their personal statement or anything like that. As far as if a program like this were to repeat in 2008, I actually think that a more balanced program which contained people who were in favor of the pan-blue side as well as people who are in favor of the pan-green side would create a lot of very stimulating and objective discussion. I actually think that people who are aware of two sides of an issue and are able to formulate a logical conclusion after examining and analyzing that issue have a more solid foundation on which they have based their own conclusions, as opposed to someone who, say, is just raised a certain way, always taught the same dogma and mantra, without ever having had the chance to examine, like, the origin of an issue, what are the countervailing arguments against your, viewpoints on that issue. I think that you really don't seem to have a strong basis of understanding why you think the way you do if you don't go through that whole examination process. So I actually would very much like to see a group where there are plenty of pan-blue supporters and an equal amount of pan-green supporters who are able to dialogue on these issues. Because besides being able to meet local Taiwanese young people and dissect their views, obviously it's Taiwanese Americans who are going to take this information back to the United States and who are going to go back and live in their local communities and who are going to engage in dialogue with their local communities that may or may not be comprised of mostly Asian people or mostly Taiwanese people or Taiwanese originated people. But they could be moving back to areas where it's mostly a mix of Americans that have, maybe they don't even know where Taiwan is, or maybe they don't even know what is all this rhetoric and what are all these political issues, about. So in order for them to have a better way to articulate their viewpoints, it seems to me that having a stronger education and knowing the arguments would make them stronger advocates for whatever side they choose to support. I would be very much in favor of seeing more pan-blue supporters come and engage in dialogue and get the same type of overarching education on this type of program. But I don't really know if that's anything that the people who put on this program can deliberately try to find. I don't know how they would go about trying to specifically find people who support one view or the other.
Don't you think TACL attracts the Taiwanese people Taiwanese Americans with similar family roots that would just naturally be on the green side, green side?
I don't know what TACL. I guess I'm not sure what it is about TACL that would be attractive to someone who's either, who thinks one way or another. I think TACL is designed to be an organization that provides education, that does community service, and that promotes civic awareness and political awareness on issues that affect Taiwan and the Taiwanese American community. And I don't know if an issue like, say, Taiwan being admitted into the World Health Organization is a strictly pan-green issue, or it should be an issue that all people who have any affiliation with Taiwan, whether they have one political view or another view, should support. I think that is probably a universal issue that people can get behind. And that's the kind of issue that TACL strives to kind of raise awareness about and to push for greater understanding among the mainstream community, not just the local Asian community or Taiwanese community. So as far as TACL trying to attract a certain set of people, I would not agree with that kind of statement. I don't I don't know what it is about the organization that makes it attractive to someone in particular. What TACL does for me, or why I'm attracted to TACL, is that it gives young Taiwanese people a chance to commune with others who are like-minded in trying to formulate a sense of their Taiwanese American identity and to get a better education in areas that they may not be able to easily find, either because of language problems, inability to read or understand Mandarin, or because of accessibility problems, because there's not as much information available about Taiwan or current events in Taiwan or Taiwanese history in the United States as there is available in Taiwan itself. Yes, I did see some news reports that were coming out in English print format while our trip was still going on in Taiwan. Some of the things that I saw did not really alarm me, and it really wasn't until I came back to the United States that I was able to look more carefully into the different English newsprint media that is covering the situation in Taiwan. And a number of things have really, I think there's a number of things that have come up since I came back from Taiwan that I find very disturbing. The first is that there are several articles and in very well established publications like CNN, like Time, Asia, which are reported by reporters who are reporting from Beijing, not from Taipei, not from Tainan, not from Kaohsiung, not from anywhere in the island of Taiwan. And I find that very surprising that such well-established, well-revered organizations don't even send their reporters to Taiwan. And considering that Taiwan has free press and has free press by international agencies, even allowing news press from the Al Jazeera to go to Taiwan to cover the election, I see no reason why such well-funded and well-organized media organizations would not send their reporter to Taiwan. The other thing that is disturbing is that a lot of the news coverage is not objective at all. It only articulates the blue side's complaints related to the election, and it doesn't at all delve into a factual analysis of how the election laws work in Taiwan, how the election process is established in Taiwan to prevent fraud, to prevent ballot tampering, and so forth. It also doesn't even present President Chen or the DPP party's response to complaints by the KMT and the PFP regarding the election, the count, and the recount process. It's extremely biased reporting, and as far as international news coverage, I find it to be absolutely objectionable, considering that the international community is going to read this material and just consider it to be objective reporting, when in fact it's not. The other thing is there's only a handful of designated reporters in the world who cover the Asia region on a full-time basis, in particular Taiwan. There's a number of freelance reporters that cover the area, and most of those freelance reporters submit their articles to the newswires like Associated Press and Reuters. And when Reuters and Associated Press pick up their articles, again, those articles become circulated through English print media many, many times over. And because if, in fact, those reports are not objective, again, biased reporting becomes proliferated and quoted and reread time and time again. It's well known that the media in Taiwan is extremely biased, that certain newspapers are supportive of certain parties, and therefore if you are a pan-blue supporter, you always read such and such newspaper and listen to such and such political show. And likewise, if you are a pan-green party supporter, you always read your paper and watch your political show. And therefore, there really isn't a sense of necessity for objectivity in Taiwan in their news media. But the international community should be more responsible. The only international press that I have seen to be consistently unbiased and well reported are the Taipei Times, which actually gives quite a bit of analysis into facts and law, and also the BBC, which even in their English reporting media in Taiwan at the time of the election and the days right after the election have been pretty well covered and in depth. Source. They have a source. They have, a contact who gives them information, who feeds them facts in order for them to write their news stories. And they don't go to the streets themselves. I mean, I read articles that have headlines like the fluoridization of Taiwan, or lead lines like the streets of Taipei have been paralyzed for days, when in fact, if you analyze the election process, if you analyze the recount process, if you analyze the ways that both parties have raised issues and responded to issues, there is no fluoridization analysis at play. And the streets of Taipei being paralyzed, I really would take issue with that, for especially the idea that they have been paralyzed for days. In fact, security has been increased in Taipei, especially in the city center near the presidential palace, where protesting has continued for a number of days after the election. But as far as paralysis, I would not go so far as to say the city is paralyzed. It's really a limited area of the city. Yes, traffic has been closed and bus routes have been diverted, and there's been an increase in security, but people are still able to walk around in the streets, get in and out of the buildings they need to go to, conduct business as usual, and it's really the potential for violence or outbreaks or whatever, that security has been beefed up, especially considering that originally those protesters were not protesting legally. They had not applied for a permit. They were not, they were disturbing the peace. And there had been a number of violent outbreaks throughout other parts of Taipei. And in order to preserve the city's safety, yes, more security had been deployed. But I personally, Joe Schmo, not a security officer, not in any type of uniform, no bodyguards or anything with me, was able to walk up and down any of the streets surrounding the presidential palace, walk through the rallying people, and there was no problem at all in getting around in that area of town. So paralysis is really, I think, an inappropriate word to use, and any reporter who would have walked the streets of Taipei himself or herself should have been able to make the same conclusion.
Well, so to say that the streets are paralyzed, is that exacerbating the situation?
I think it is. In fact, I think it's really like kind of fueling, I don't know, maybe like a spectator mentality, like look at this spectacle kind of thing. And look how this fiasco has crippled the city. I mean, I think it's just kind of, I don't know, hysterical language that is not really very appropriate.
So my question is, do you think CNN, or what are the other publications, sorry?
I read CNN International and also Time Asia.
Are they necessarily pro-blue, or do they just have one source and they don't like think about the fact that it's possibly biased? Or
I don't know. I don't know who those reporters are exactly, and I don't know what their source of material is. I would think that their source of material is not diverse enough. And I also can conclude from the fact that they're not even reporting from Taiwan that they haven't done their own research or their own legwork in getting their story together. Well, yeah, I don't think I would go so far as to accuse CNN of having been bought out. But I think that there is a certain level of negligence, yes, in their reporting. Yes.
But then, is it just been established they just have this one contact, or and it just happens to be that one? So, like, do you think CNN is aware of the fact that they're biased, essentially, because of their source?
I really don't know. But I've already started writing letters and urging people who are aware of actual facts to write letters to the editors and complain that their stories are completely unobjective. I think a lot of Green Party supporters would think it's intentional. I myself don't necessarily conclude it's an intentional bias. I think that there's a rampant amount of negligence. I don't think it's insurmountable. And I think for sure if there's a significant amount of complaints to the editor and a demand for more objective reporting, then I think that the reporting will in fact be reformed in the future.
So do you think it's possible that they may not even know that there's two like very biased sides? Or
That I really don't know. I think it's certainly it's possible, considering like Taiwan is not an area that's covered every day. You know, in the last few months, of course, leading up to the election, there's been quite a bit more coverage in Taiwan. But I would not be surprised if someone told me there's no full-time reporter for CNN covering Taiwan. I would not be surprised at all, considering it's not a region that has to be covered like in such depth and detail on a daily basis. Well, first, I would like to see reporters reporting on the ground in Taiwan. The second thing I'd like to see is better analysis of two sides, each of the political sides, which I have not seen a lot of, especially in media that's very well respected in the United States in particular, like CNN.